Imagine if we could skip the unsheath animation and get back instant reset from the good old Strider Vocation. I think these two changes alone could bring back Nihil, and this massive unofficial update to the game delivers on almost all the things I wanted Capcom to change after the launch of Dragon's Dogma 2. They have finally brought back old skills like Miasma and Brontide for the Sorcerer. Mystic Spearhand's bolts now actually deal damage, and the Trickster Vocation is finally able to do damage with its sensor. I will cover every change this provides in a rapid-fire format, so without further ado, let's start with the changes for the fighter first. Using a heavy attack while blocking now will trigger a shield pummel. The charge time for Tusk Toss is reduced, and fall damage reduction from Steel Foundation is increased by 50%. And the window to achieve a true deflect have been increased from 6 frames to 9 frames. And something really cool is that fighters now can block with their sword if no shield is equipped. Hindsight Sweep now have increased avoidance frames, and damage is increased by 50% if you don't have a shield equipped. The speed of stabs by Gutting Skewer is increased by 12%, and while using this skill you have a 30% damage reduction. One of the two new skills added to the fighter vocation is Twirling Cut. It spins several times to deliver a multitude of cuts that covers a wide vertical distance. And we have Crossing Maw, a new skill that performs 2 powerful two-handed cuts in quick succession. Archers now get a few iframes at the start of their dash light attack, and Punctured Dart no longer shakes the crosshair, and it has no damage fall-off, meaning you can use it as a long-range option for sniping enemies. They have removed the damage fall-off of Lynchian Sight and increased its damage by 30%. Deathly Arrow's dagger is reduced by 20 to 30%, and Heavenly Shot increased by 10%, and it no longer has damage fall-off with distance. You can now use special arrow skills without the need of special arrows, but with an increased stamina cost and reduced speed. And finally, they have reduced the damage of exploding shots by 35% to balance it out. For mages, moving or levitating no longer affects cast speed, and animations for readying spells have been made 100 times faster. This means you will start the casting animation of the spell as soon as you finish charging it. Also, when you finish charging a spell while levitating, you will end the levitation. This way you aren't forced to wait until levitation naturally ends before casting the spell. Spell hold no longer penalizes stamina consumption or stamina recovery at level 2. High Palladium now protects allies for 1 hit instead of 2. Empyrean now deals double damage against undead and 20 times damage against non-undead enemies. An interesting addition to the Flagration spell is that consecutive hits against the same enemy increase damage by 10% each. The damage of Levin follow-up strikes ramps up the more you cast them, up to a limit of 5 times the damage on the 7th hit. However, the stamina cost of these follow-ups are doubled. Frigor now has a sweet spot mechanic, where it deals 30% more damage if you're at the right distance from your target, and have reduced charge time for Solemnity. Celestial Paean is reduced stamina recovery by 70%, so it's still strong but have received a nerf. Thieves have received some added maneuverability, and a neutral jump after light attacking or dodging will now trigger a concussive leap. Thieves now actually deal 15% extra melee damage when climbing on monsters, and the inputs required to activate Scarlet Kisses is reduced from 5 to 3 times in 1 second. Skull Splitter have been nerfed and the damage reduced by 35%. They have increased the duration of the fire enchantment by ignited blades to 20 seconds. And enemies are now far less likely to target you while using Shadow Cloak. Formless Feints have been nerfed, and stamina consumed per second is increased to 50 instead of 15. The self-damage caused by Blades of the Pyre is removed, but the damage done to enemies is reduced by 50%. Smoke Shroud is now reworked into an AoE stagger that can even interrupt bosses, but it no longer allows for critical hits on small enemies. The smokescreen have also been made more transparent to prevent visual obstruction. The stamina cost of Implicate have been increased to almost a double, and hitting an enemy will no longer do instant stagger. Finally, we get Instant Reset as a returning skill. It can reset your body to a neutral position, cancelling any ongoing skill, attack or stagger. Warrior attacks are now 30% faster. Dashing and jump light attacks are now 10% faster. Tidal Wrath have been completely reworked. You can now choose whether to perform a horizontal or vertical counter attack by using the light or heavy attack button. Arc of Might now has a fixed stamina consumption of 800 and the charge time is reduced by 1 second. Diluvian Strike is now faster to use and has less recovery frames, as well as reduced charge time for Indomitable Lash. Inspirits can now cancel Stagger, and you can't get Stagger out of it. And finally we get a new skill, Eviscerate, that quickly impales an opponent and pull the blade out for more damage. The Sorcerer Vocation have received a lot of changes here, and your basic attacks now restore stamina and are faster to use and cancel. Burst Bolt charges faster and deals 50% more damage, and the follow-up explosion now happens instantly. Instead of Galvanize, we now get Miasma, where the caster corrupts holy magic to summon a dark mist that periodically damages enemies. And we're getting Ingle back, a fireball that explodes upon contact. Brontide is also returning, and while lightning courses through the user, turning light and heavy attacks into powerful lightning strikes. Serac is another new skill that coats the user with ice, turning light attacks into ice shards, and Bursting Bolts delivers a powerful ice blast. The cast time of Haggle is reduced by 1 second, and Decanter slows down the targeted enemy by 50%. The base damage of Seism now scales only with magic, and Augural Flare cast time is increased to almost double. And finally, Meteoron no longer deals physical damage, but pure fire damage. Mystic Spear Hands have received a couple of interesting changes, and your Redoubted Bolt now has a faster shooting animation and deals damage. The first level charge of Redoubted Bolt is almost instant now, however, it no longer slows down enemies or allows you to use Scattering Bolt. Mystic Spear Hands now deals 15% extra melee damage when standing on monsters. They have reduced the inputs required for Winding Cuts, and Setching Blade can only summon 1 blade now, but it shoots out 4 projectiles at once. Unto Heaven now deals damage and has better tracking, and the camera is no longer fixed while using it. Mirror Shield no longer recovers stamina while it's active and costs you 35% of your max stamina. Ski Dragon's Festa have increased the jump height from 3 to 5 meters, so you can consistently get on top of most monsters. And Magic Spear Gun no longer makes the crosshair shake. And finally, Moment's Charge no longer consumes health, and now has access to what was before the heavy slowdown of level 2 Redoubted Bolt. Magic Archer's Quickfire basic attacks now has 3 times more damage and range, as well as better tracking. Your heavy attacks are replaced with Archer's Kicks, and the running light attack now also gives you iframes. Sagittate Avalanche and Ricochet Hunter have been nerfed, but Bolt Chain Stake now deals 5 times more dazed status effects. Life-Taking Arrow now have increased stamina cost, and is more balanced against big enemies. And finally, March's Bolt no longer consumes loss gauge, but you can't heal while charging it. For the Trickster, your Drifting Broom charged attack has been replaced with Suffocating Shroud, and Aromatic Rally no longer damages your pawns, and duration reduced to 10 seconds. Fragrant Allurum now restores stamina to the whole party while channeling it. And finally, Vorpal Effluvium, a new skill, replaces Suffocating Shroud and gives you a 30-second buff that speeds up your sensor attacks and makes them deal actual damage. Now, I think these changes are so well balanced that Capcom should just copy all of this and add it to the next update. But until then, you can download this mod on Nexus. But yeah, that's all I have for today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.